Maria woke before dawn, the first pale light slipping through the thin curtains of her small room. She swung her legs over the side of the narrow bed and padded across the cool, cracked tile floor. The old house was quiet, save for the soft breathing of her younger brother still fast asleep on the mattress beside her. Their father had left early for a day of hard labor, carrying his heavy tool bag toward the construction site in the next town. Maria paused by her brother's side and touched his tousled hair. He mumbled once and turned over, and Maria smiled gently. She did not wake him. She tiptoed back to the bed and reached under her pillow. Her fingers closed around a small, chipped wooden box. Within the box were her dolls. One was different. One had a dress made from a scrap of pink cloth. Another wore a ribbon that her grandmother had tied. The third was just bits of cloth stitched over a tiny frame of wire, but Maria loved it all the same. The dolls kept her company on lonely days. When her mother was well, Maria would line them up on the windowsill and imagine they talked to each other in soft voices. Now, in the early light, Maria sat on the floor and opened the box. She looked at each doll one by one, remembering moments when she had smiled at them, held them close, and wished for happy things. The morning air was cool, though the sun would soon make the day hot and bright. Maria closed the lid of the box gently and slipped out of her room. She walked down the narrow hallway, noticing the peeling paint on the walls and the single bulb that flickered in the ceiling. She paused at the doorway where her mother lay in the small hospital bed that her father had managed to pay for. The room was part of the local clinic, a place crowded with patients and tired nurses. Maria watched her mother Rosa, breathing slowly under the thin blanket. Her cheeks were paler than usual, and a small tube ran from her arm to a bag of medicine. The sight made Maria's heart squeeze. Every afternoon, Maria left school early. She ran the dusty 5 blocks to be by her mother's side before her father came. During the day, she tried to focus on her lessons, but she could not stop thinking about her mother's tired eyes. The way her voice came out as a faint whisper. The doctors said Rosa needed a special trial of medicines at a hospital far away. The fee was more than her father could earn in a year. It felt like an ocean between them and the cure. On some nights, Maria forced herself to sleep, but her dreams were full of worry. Maria sat beside the bed now, clutching the box of dolls. The nurse Alina had told her mother that the trial was the best hope. But 3 days ago, the nurse had said, "I'm sorry, cannot help with the fee." Rosa had closed her eyes when she heard that. Maria guessed her mother did not want her to cry, but Maria still heard the quiet catch in her breath. This morning, Maria felt a resolve in her chest. She would help find a way. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a sketch she had drawn. It was a drawing of the dolls, each one painted in bright colors. At school, Maria sold sketches to other children. Some friends traded pencils or snacks. For her art, she could raise some money, but not nearly enough. Still, she thought, maybe the story of the dolls could show someone how much her mother meant to her. Gently, Maria rose and placed the wooden box on the small table next to the bed. Rosa stirred and opened her eyes. She saw Maria and tried to smile, but her face was too tired for a full smile. Maria reached for her mother's hand and squeezed it.
"Morning, Mama,"
she said in a soft voice. "It's okay. I have an idea." Today, Rosa blinked slowly and closed her eyes again, as if she did not want to talk. But Maria felt her mother squeeze back, small sign that she listened. Maria remembered how her grandmother once told her that gifts from the heart could touch people in ways money never could. Her grandmother had died when Maria was young, but she kept the memory of her gentle words. This morning, Maria felt her grandmother's words strong inside her. She took a deep breath. She would go to the doctor herself and offer the gift that meant the most to her, the dolls in their worn little dresses. The hallway lights flickered as Maria left the room. She held the box tight against her chest. She passed other patients and their families, some in quiet prayer, others staring out the small windows. She nodded respectfully to the nurse who sat at the nurse's station, her eyes tired from many long shifts. The nurse gave a slight nod back. No one stopped her. They all seemed used to seeing children walking hospital halls. When Maria reached the doctor's office, she paused. The door was propped open. Inside, Dr. Patel sat behind a large desk covered with patient files and medical journals. He looked up when Maria walked in. His face was kind, and his eyes had a warmth that made Maria feel less scared. Still, her heart pounded. "Double quotes, Dr. Patel," Maria said, her voice trembling a little. I want to give you something." She held out the box. "This is all I have. These dolls are special. They remind me of happy times with Mama. Please help her." Dr. Patel rose and came around the desk. He knelt so his eyes were level with Maria's. The office was bright, with a small window behind him showing a patch of sky. He took the box gently. The dolls looked worn, but carefully kept. Dr. Patel opened the lid and lifted each doll as Maria spoke. "These dolls are from when I was younger," she said. "I played with them when I was happy. I want Mama to be happy again. I don't have money, but I have these." Dr. Patel's voice came soft. "They are beautiful, Maria. Your gift is very special." He closed the lid and put the box on his desk. His eyes filled with something like sadness. Maria felt a lump in her throat. "I don't know how else to help," she said, blinking back tears. "Mama needs that trial." She pointed toward the small treatment plan posted on the wall. Dr. Patel placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. His own hand was large, and when he touched her, she felt both comforted and very small. "You are very brave," he said. "I will see what I can do." He paused and looked at Maria with deep attention. "I promise I will not forget your gift." Maria nodded and turned to go. Her legs felt shaky, but she held herself up and walked back down the hall. She did not look back at the office. She climbed the stairs to her mother's room, each step heavy with hope and fear. When she reached the doorway, she saw her mother sleeping again. Maria sat beside her and closed her eyes. She whispered, "I gave the dolls, Mama. I hope it helps." Outside, the sun climbed higher. Maria felt its warmth through the window, and for a moment, she dared to believe in a miracle. By late morning, Maria returned home. Her father was away. She found her brother playing quietly with a broken toy car. Maria smiled at him and sat down. She told him about the box of dolls and how she had given it to Dr. Patel. Her brother listened with wide eyes and nodded. "We'll bring Mama home soon," Maria said, though inside, she did not know if she spoke the truth. She set the box of dolls on the small table at home, now empty. She felt a quiet sadness at the sight of it, but also a spark of something new. Perhaps kindness and hope could be enough. That afternoon, as the sun moved west, Maria returned to the clinic. She found Dr. Patel near the nurse's station, speaking with the nurse Elena. When he saw Maria, he came forward with a gentle smile. "Maria," he said, "thank you for your gift. You have shown great love for your mother." Maria felt her heart race. "Did you talk to someone?" she whispered. Dr. Patel's eyes were bright. "Yes," he said softly. "I have asked for help from a friend of the hospital. You may be able to cover your mother's trial fees." Maria's hand flew to her chest. Her breath caught. "Really?" she asked. He nodded. "I will let you know as soon as I have an answer." Tears filled Maria's eyes. She blinked hard and held back a sob. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much." She turned and ran down the hall, her feet lighter than they had been in days. That night, Maria lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the street outside. She closed her eyes and thought of her mother, of the dolls, of the promise Dr. Patel had made. She felt tired but hopeful. She whispered into the dark, "Please, let Mama heal." And with that wish in her heart, she drifted into a restless sleep, dreaming of the day her mother would smile again. The next morning, the clinic hummed with quiet activity. Maria slipped through the sliding doors just as the sun rose over the hospital roof. She carried no dolls now, only a small sketchbook. Her heart pounded as she walked past the reception desk, where Nurse Elena stood on tired feet, her eyes softening when she saw Maria's determined face. "Good morning, Maria," she said, using the Spanish pronunciation that felt warmer than the English. "How is your mother today?" Maria forced a smile. "She slept well," she said, though her voice trembled a bit. Lena nodded and waved Maria toward the long hallway that led to Dr. Patel's office. Maria clutched the sketchbook to her chest. Inside were dozens of drawings, portraits of her mother, studies of the dolls, and sketches of the small house where they lived. She had spent every spare moment after school drawing, hoping to earn a few coins by selling her art to neighbors or classmates. She told herself today she would show her drawings to Dr. Patel. Maybe their beauty would touch his heart just as the dolls had. As she walked, she replayed the words Dr. Patel had spoken yesterday. "I promise I will not forget your gift."
Ow.
Reached the door marked Dr. Patel and knocked softly. He looked up from a chart, his eyes kind but serious. "Maria," he said, "come in." The office smelled of paper and clean linen. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting long stripes of light across the desk. Maria stepped inside, heart thundering. She noticed a tall man standing near the back of the room, dressed in a sharp suit. His hair was silver at the temples, and he held a leather folder in his hand. His presence filled the room with a quiet authority. Dr. Patel rose and walked around the desk. "Maria, this is Mr. Reyes," he said gently. "He helps the hospital with special funds for families in need." Maria's breath caught. The name sounded familiar. Her father had mentioned a billionaire who gave money to good causes. Nodded to Mr. Reyes, blinking rapidly. "Hello, Maria," he said in a warm voice. His accent was soft, like he spoke slowly, so each word carried weight. "I've heard of your gift. These dolls are very precious." Dr. Patel gestured to a small table. On it lay the wooden box, now open. The dolls arranged carefully. Mr. Reyes knelt down next to the table, his suit jacket brushing the floor. He reached out and lifted the smallest doll, the one with the pink cloth dress. He turned it gently in his hands and looked closely at the tiny stitches. Maria bit her lip, watching his face. He looked at the doll as if it held the world's secrets. "This is beautiful," he said, his voice low. He set the doll back and stood. He looked at Maria. "Tell me more about your mother." Maria felt her throat tighten. She blinked back tears. "She is very kind," she began. "She taught me to draw. She told me every picture could carry love. She saved scraps of cloth so I could make the dolls. When she fell sick, I wanted to help her. I gave the dolls to Dr. Patel because I thought their meaning could help pay for her medicine." Mr. Reyes listened, his face thoughtful. He nodded. Slowly, Dr. Patel watched his friend carefully. "Jonathan," he said, using the friend's first name. "The trial costs are far beyond what the family can manage. But Maria's gift shows how much love she has for her mother. It reminds us why we do this work." Mr. Reyes folded his arms. "I agree," he said. Turned back to Maria. "Your mother is lucky to have you, Mary Alliters. You have shown courage that many adults lack." Maria's cheeks flushed. She looked down at her shoes, imagining she must look very small next to this powerful man. Mr. Reyes moved closer to the desk and opened his leather folder. He took out a sheet of heavy paper. On it was a formal letter, stamped with the hospital seal. He read aloud its main lines, that the hospital's foundation would cover all fees for Rose's clinical trial and related treatments. The family attended each appointment and followed the doctor's orders. Maria's eyes grew wide. She felt a tremor of disbelief. The letter meant "Hope or you'll hope." When Mr. Reyes finished reading, he handed the paper to Dr. Patel. The doctor nodded and looked at Maria. "This is for your mother," he said softly. He put the paper on his desk, where the sunlight made it gleam. "She will start the trial next week." Maria swallowed hard. She felt her chest tighten with relief and joy. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Mr. Reyes knelt again. He looked Maria in the eyes. "I want to meet her," he said. "See how she is when she gets better." Maria nodded. She stood taller, as if she had grown a little. Dr. Patel led her to the door. "Go find your mother," he said. "Tell her the good news." Maria left the office on unsteady legs. She barely felt her own footsteps as she ran down the hallway. She burst into her mother's room without knocking. Rosa lay with her eyes closed, as if she was still sleeping. Maria rushed to the bed and knelt beside her. "Mama," she said, her voice full of tears and laughter, "Mr. Reyes will help us. Said he will pay for everything." Rosa's eyes opened slowly. Maria could see confusion, then recognition, then a spark of hope. Dr. Patel and Mr. Reyes followed. Dr. Patel smiled kindly at Rosa and introduced her to Mr. Reyes. "This is Jonathan Reyes," he said. Rosa tried to sit up, her face a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. Mr. Reyes held out his hand. He spoke gently. "I am honored to help you, Senora. Your daughter's love inspired me." Rosa's lips trembled. She took his hand and shook it. Why, she could not find her voice at first. Maria watched, her heart full, tears streaming down her cheeks. After a moment, Rosa spoke. Her voice was soft, but every word held emotion. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you both. I don't know how to repay you." Mr. Reyes smiled. "Let your daughter sleep peacefully at night," he said. "That gift is enough." They talked for a few more minutes. Rosa asked about the trial, and Dr. Patel explained what would happen. Mr. Reyes listened, and Maria felt a bubble of happiness rise in her chest. She touched her mother's hand, feeling its warmth. She looked at the two adults who made this miracle happen and felt her faith in kindness grow stronger. Later that afternoon, Maria walked home with her brother. She felt like she floated half the way. She thought of the dolls resting now in Dr. Patel's office, safe and honored. She thought of her mother, who would soon get the medicine she needed. She thought of Mr. Reyes, whose tears had glistened. When he learned why Maria gave her dolls, when they reached home, Maria paused at the gate. The paint was chipped, and the garden was just a few pots of wilting flowers. It felt plain compared to the shiny hospital. But now, to Maria, it felt like a place of miracles. She turned and helped her brother inside. She closed the door. She whispered, "We will be okay." That evening, Maria sat at the little wooden table and opened her sketchbook. She drew a picture of the hospital lobby, with Nurse Alina at her desk, Dr. Patel and Mr. Reyes talking, and herself holding the box of dolls. She drew herself smiling, even though she had been so nervous. She filled the page with color-bright blues, soft pinks, gentle golds. When she finished, she traced the words, "Kindness changes everything." She showed the drawing to her brother, and he stared at it with wide eyes. "It's beautiful," he said. Maria smiled. She tucked the sketchbook under her arm and climbed the stairs to the small room she shared with him. She opened one of the windows and looked out at the stars. The air was cool and smelled of jasmine. She closed her eyes and let the gentle night breeze brush her face. For the first time in many days, Maria felt calm. She thought of her mother, resting in her hospital bed, no longer afraid of what would come. She thought of the dolls on the table in Dr. Patel's office, now symbols not of loss, but of hope. And she thought of Mr. Reyes, stranger who saw a little girl's love and decided to help. Maria whispered into the night, "Thank you," though she knew the words were meant for many people, her mother. The nurse, the doctor, and the billionaire, who stopped in his tracks and broke down. She folded her hands and whispered a small prayer. Then she climbed into bed, her soul lighter than it had been in a long time. She drifted off to sleep, dreaming of bright mornings ahead, when her mother would smile again and the world would feel full of kindness. Maria climbed the familiar steps of the clinic each morning, her small form almost dancing with hope. The sun had barely risen when she arrived. Her school bag slung over one shoulder and her heart filled with a new kind of courage. Today was the first day of her mother's clinical trial, and Maria felt a mix of excitement and worry. She remembered the long nights spent praying, the dolls she had offered, and the promise that her mother would get the help she needed. Now that promise would begin to take shape. When Maria reached the door to her mother's room, she paused and smoothed her dress. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open.
Ow.
Rosa lay resting, her face pale but peaceful. The machines beside her bed ticked softly, helping her breathe and record her heartbeat. Maria stepped forward quietly, then broke into a bright smile. "Good morning, Mama," she whispered, taking her mother's thin hand in her own. Rosa's eyes fluttered open, and she returned the smile, though her lips trembled with the effort. "Good morning, Mihija," she said softly. She coughed once, then closed her eyes again as the nurse eased a cup of warm tea toward her lips. Maria served the tea carefully, watching the steam curl in the early light. The nurse Alina bent close and whispered, "The trial team will arrive soon. Are you ready, Rosa?" Rosa nodded, and Alina patted Maria on the shoulder, her eyes full of warmth. "You have done well, Maria," she said. Maria's chest swelled with pride. Soon, two doctors in white coats entered the room, carrying clipboards. They spoke quietly to Dr. Patel, who stood by the window, his face solemn but kind. One of the doctors checked Rosa's foreline, adjusting the flow of the new medicine. The other measured her blood pressure and listened to her heart. Maria stood back, watching every movement, her heart hammering with each beep of the monitor. She wondered what the medicine would feel like in her mother's body, and if it would really work. After the initial checks, Dr. Patel came to Maria's side. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Your mother is doing very well so far," he said quietly. "The trial medicine can cause discomfort at first, but we are here to help her through it." He placed a gentle hand on Maria's shoulder. "You stay strong for her, okay?" Maria nodded, blinking back tears. "I will," she promised. The trial began that afternoon. Rosa felt tired in ways she had never known before. Her body shook with chills, then burned with fever. She lay in bed, her head turned to the side, while the doctors checked her and the nurses brought cool cloths. To ease the fever, Maria sat nearby, her sketchbook in her lap, but she could not draw. Instead, she traced the edge of the paper with trembling fingers. She wanted to help her mother feel better, but all she could do was sit and watch. As the hours passed, Maria whispered stories to her mother, tales of the dolls and the garden at home, of the supper they would share when she returned. She told Rosa about her brother's mischief with the toy car, about the new flowers that had bloomed in their small yard. She spoke softly, her voice a steady stream of love. Occasionally Rosa opened her eyes and smiled, and Maria felt hope burn brighter inside her chest. By evening, Rosa's fever broke, and the trial medicine settled into her system. The doctors adjusted her treatment plan and promised they would call Maria when it was time to return the next day. Maria slipped out into the hallway, her legs weak from standing so long. She found Nurse Alina and Dr. Patel at the nurses' station. Both offered her encouraging words. Dr. Patel said, "She did well today. You did well today." Maria managed a small nod, then headed home. At home, Maria found her father seated at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. When he saw her enter, he looked up, his eyes red from worry. He reached out and ruffled her hair. "How is your mother?" he asked, his voice husky. Maria sat beside him and took his hand. "She's resting," she said. "The first dose was hard, but they think it is working." Her father squeezed her hand, relief flooding his face. He stood and embraced her, lifting her in a warm hug. Maria felt safe in his arms, but a shadow of worry still lingered. She knew the trial would last weeks, and each day could bring new challenges. That night, Maria could not sleep. She lay on her small mattress beside her brother, listening to his soft breathing. She thought of her mother's pain, of the needles and the tears. She thought of her offer of dolls and how it had brought such kindness into their lives. She whispered a prayer for strength, not just for her mother, but for herself and her family. Eventually, her eyes grew heavy, and she drifted into a light sleep filled with dreams of flowers growing in a bright field. The next week was a blur of hospital visits and school days. Each morning, Maria hurried through her lessons, her mind half on classwork and half on her mother's room. Teacher, Senora Gomez, noticed her distraction and gently asked if everything was all right. Maria nodded and forced a smile, explaining that her mother was ill but getting help. Senora Gomez placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and quietly allowed extra time for Maria to complete her tasks. Maria was grateful for the small kindness, which reminded her of the gift she had given and the help she had received. Clinic each day, Rosa's condition showed small signs of improvement. Her fever returned less often, and she began to speak with more strength. One afternoon, she reached out and held Maria's hand.
"Thank you,"
she whispered,
"for everything."
Maria pressed her mother's hand and felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. She told her mother of the progress she had made in school and how her friends drew pictures for her mother's recovery. She shared sketches of sunflowers and rainbows, each one a promise of better days. But the trial was not without setbacks. One morning, Dr. Patel arrived looking more serious than usual. He explained that Rosa's body had reacted badly overnight, and they would need to halt the trial for a day to let her system calm down. Maria felt her heart sink. She stood by her mother's bedside, stroking her hair. Rosa's face was pale and drawn as she tried to offer a reassuring smile. "This is just a bump," she said softly. "We will get past it." Maria nodded, though inside she trembled with fear. She whispered to her mother a promise that they would prevail, and that for every hard moment they would find a spark of hope. During the break, Maria found herself longing for the dolls she had given away. She missed their soft presence and the comfort they brought. She realized that even though she no longer had them, their spirit lived on in every act of kindness she had witnessed. She decided to create new art, drawing a series of pictures showing the dolls standing beside her mother, holding her hands and guiding her through the trial. She poured every emotion into her sketches: fear, love, hope, and determination. The day the trial resumed, Rosa was stronger. She met the medicine with courage, her body reacting less severely. Maria watched with tears in her eyes as her mother sat up in bed, talking quietly with Dr. Patel about the plan. That evening, Dr. Patel pulled Maria aside. "Your mother's health is improving more than we expected. Believing. Maria, your faith gives all of us strength." Maria nodded, her heart full. By the end of the second week, Rosa could sit in a chair and eat soup again. She and Maria shared simple meals together in the small break area of the clinic, laughing softly over shared memories. One day, Rosa even helped Maria finish her drawings, guiding her hand as she sketched the dolls with new dresses, each one bright and whole again. Maria felt a deep sense of joy watching her mother work with her, the trial's burdens momentarily lifted by their shared creativity. At home, the family gathered each evening to celebrate small victories. Rosa's empty. Medicine bags were placed on the table and then taken away, like trophies of survival. Maria's father cooked rice and vegetables, and they talked about the future where her mother would be well enough to return to her garden and teach. Maria prayed for that day, imagining her mother's laugh echoing through their home once more. The trial carried on, and each day brought new tests and new small triumphs. Maria continued to balance school and hospital visits, drawing and praying, loving and hoping. She learned that strength could come in many forms: in the hands of a doctor, the heart of a nurse, the check of a billionaire, and the faith of a little girl with a box of dolls. And through it all, her mother fought, and Maria stood beside her, each one giving the other the courage to face another day. Maria felt the morning sun warm her face as she climbed the clinic stairs. Each step reminded her of how far she and her mother had come. Yesterday, Rosa had sat up in bed and smiled when the nurse brought her a fresh set of sheets. Today, Maria hoped for more progress. She adjusted her dress, straightened her school bag, and walked through the sliding doors. Inside, the hallway bustled with activity. Patients shuffled along, nurses moved quickly from room to room, and the distant hum of machines echoed softly. Maria paused at her mother's door and peeked inside. Rosa lay against her pillows, eyes closed, but lips curved in a gentle smile. Maria's heart lifted. She opened the door and stepped in, kneeling beside the bed. "Good morning, Mama," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Rosa's forehead. Rosa's eyes opened slowly, and she reached out to hold Maria's hand. "Good morning, my brave girl," she replied. Her voice was stronger now, with less tremble. Maria felt hope bloom in her chest. The trial team would arrive soon. Dr. Patel had said. Unlike the first days, today they came together in a small group. The lead doctor, a gentlewoman named Dr. Huang, carried a chart. She greeted Rosa warmly, explaining today's procedures. The nurses checked vital signs, adjusted for lines, and prepared the new dose of medicine. Rosa's face remained calm, as if she had grown used to the routine. Maria watched each movement and learned from them how kindness and skill guided every action. After the checks, Dr. Huang noticed Maria in the corner. She knelt down and smiled. "You've done well," she said softly. "Your mother is stronger because of your courage." Maria pressed her lips together to keep from crying. She nodded. I try, she said. Dr. Huang reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small sticker with a cartoon sunflower. She placed it on Maria's dress. For being so brave, she said. Maria's eyes lit up as she touched the sticker. When the medicine was ready, the nurses filled the syringe. Maria felt a flutter of nervousness. She clenched her sketchbook against her chest. Rosa saw her look and squeezed her hand. I can do this, Rosa said softly. Because you are here. Maria nodded and whispered, I'm here. The nurse inserted the needle, and Rosa held still. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the medicine flowing like gentle water through her mother's veins. She opened her eyes to see Rosa breathing with quiet steadiness. After the dose, the trial team moved to the door. Dr. Patel paused and looked at Maria and Rosa. Today's a good day, he said. Let's see what tomorrow brings. He patted Rosa's shoulder and she smiled. Maria felt relief wash over her. That afternoon, Maria returned to school. Her teacher, Senora Gomez, met her at the door. She gently guided Maria inside and handed back her homework. I'm proud of you, she said. Keep doing your best here and at the clinic. Maria thanked her and took her seat. She listened to lessons about math and history, her mind half on numbers and half on the image of her mother conquering each challenge. At recess, her friends shared snacks and laughter. Maria smiled, happy to taste peanut butter cookies and hear the swing creak under her friends' feet. She drew small sunflowers on the edge of her notebook, reminding herself of the sticker Dr. Huang had given her. After school, Maria walked swiftly to the clinic. The sky was painted orange and pink as the sun dipped low. She found Nurse Alina at the station. Alina greeted her with a tired but genuine smile. How did school go today? She asked. Maria shrugged happily. Good, she said. I learned new things. Alina nodded and led her down the hallway. In her mother's room, Maria saw new signs of healing. Rosa sat up in a chair, reading a torn page from a storybook. Her cheeks had a faint color, and her eyes sparkled when she saw Maria. Look, Rosa said, handing her the page. Maria gasped. On the page was a drawing of sunflowers and dolls, and two figures holding hands. It was one of Maria's sketches. She had shown it to Rosa during her first week of treatment. Rosa had kept it. Maria's eyes filled with tears of joy. You kept it, she said softly. Rosa nodded. It reminded me of home, she said. Maria closed her sketchbook and hugged her mother gently. She felt her mother's warmth stronger than any medicine. That evening, as the clinic grew quiet, Maria and Rosa shared dinner in the small break area. They sat at a metal table with folding chairs. The smell of rice and beans and fresh bread filled the air. Fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, sat nearby, sharing simple meals and comforting smiles. Maria stirred her rice and looked at her mother. I missed this, she said. I missed our dinners. Rosa smiled and squeezed her hand. So did I, she said. Soon we will have evenings at home again. After dinner, they returned to Rosa's room. Dr. Patel stopped by, his face softer than usual. He checked Rosa's chart and the IV line, making small adjustments. He smiled at Maria. Your mother's health is improving faster than expected, he said in a low voice. We will soon reduce the dosage and see her strength return. Maria nodded, tears of relief wet in her eyes. Later, as Maria lay in bed at home, she thought of the journey so far. The dolls she had given, the drawings she had sold, the sunflowers she had sketched all had led to this moment. She whispered a prayer of thanks to her grandmother's memory. To the doctors, to the nurses, and to the billionaire who had seen her love and joined her cause. She felt a warmth in her heart, like the sun that had greeted her that morning. The next day dawned bright and clear. Adia arrived at the clinic and paused at the stairs. She noticed the box of dolls on the small table outside Dr. Patel's office. It sat open, as if waiting for someone. Maria smiled and walked past, her head held high. Knew now that each day brought new challenges, but also new hope. She climbed the stairs and entered her mother's room. Rosa sat by the window, reading aloud from a book of poems. When she saw Maria, her face lit up like the morning sun. Maria knelt beside her mother. "Good morning," she said softly. Rosa closed the book and touched Maria's cheek. "Good morning, my love," she replied.
Yes.
They held hands and watched the sky outside, knowing that each sunrise brought them closer to home and to healing. And so the trial continued, each day writing a new line in their story, one of courage, love, and the quiet power of kindness. Maria and Rosa faced each morning together, fearless and hopeful, ready for the promise of tomorrow. ChatGPT said. Maria woke with a lightness in her chest that she had not felt in many months. The sun peeked through her window, filling her small room with golden light. Today was the day her mother would leave the clinic and come home. Maria sprang from her bed, careful not to wake her little brother, and dressed quickly in her favorite blue dress. She ran downstairs to the kitchen where her father was fixing a simple breakfast of eggs and bread. He looked up and smiled as Maria burst through the door. "Mama comes home today?" Maria said, her eyes shining. Her father nodded, his face soft with relief. "Yes, Mihija, today's the day." He poured her a glass of orange juice and ruffled her hair. Maria took a deep sip, tasting the sweetness as hope bloomed inside her. They walked to the clinic together, her father's hand warm on her shoulder. Each step felt like a promise. When they reached the sliding doors, Maria's heart thumped with excitement. Inside, the halls felt different, lighter, as if the walls themselves celebrated the good news. She hurried to her mother's room. Rosa stood by her bed, holding her colorful scarf that she had knitted during her recovery. She looked strong and healthy, her cheeks rosy and her eyes bright. When she saw Maria and her father, she rushed forward and wrapped them both in a tight embrace. Maria buried her face in her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender that Rosa always wore. "I'm home," Rosa whispered, her voice steady and full of joy. Maria pulled back and looked at her mother's face. "Yes, Mama, you're home." She took Rosa's hand and guided her gently to the chair by the window. The sun shone on her mother's face, warming her skin and filling her with new energy. Dr. Patel and Nurse Alina arrived soon after, carrying small bouquets of flowers and cards decorated in bright colors. They had come to celebrate this day with the family. Dr. Patel smiled as he looked at Rosa. "You have done something remarkable," he said softly. "Your courage carried you through. Maria's love carried you every step of the way." Rosa's eyes glistened with gratitude. She held out her hand. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you both." Nurse Alina knelt beside Maria and handed her a new sticker, this one shaped like a golden heart. Maria placed it carefully on her dress and felt a surge of pride, looked at her mother and father, at Dr. Patel and Nurse Alina, and then at the bright rooms of the clinic that had become a second home. She thought of the trials, the fears, the tears and the countless acts of kindness that had carried them through. Later that morning, the small group walked from the clinic to the parked car in the lot. Rosa moved with steady steps, her father supporting her arm. Maria carried a paper bag with snacks for the journey home, fruit, nuts, and a few of her homemade cookies. Dr. Patel held open the car door for them and helped Rosa settle into the seat. Maria slid in beside her and handed her the cookies. Rosa smiled and nibbled one gently, savoring the simple sweetness. As the car drove away, Maria pressed her face to the window.
Oh.
She watched the clinic grow smaller behind them. She remembered the first day she had come here, afraid and alone, with only a box of dolls and a hope in her heart. She thought of the billionaire Mr. Reyes who had knelt to hold the smallest doll, tears in his eyes. She thought of the doctors and nurses who had treated her mother like family. And she thought of her father, who had worked long hours to pay for each day of care. All these people, she realized, had believed in her mother's right to live and love and laugh again. The drive home was quiet and happy. Maria's brother climbed into the back seat and grinned when he saw Rosa smiling beside her. Wildly through the window, and Maria waved back, her hand shaking with joy. The sky was clear, and the road stretched ahead like a ribbon of promise. When they reached their home, Maria slipped out and ran to open the gate. The house looked small and worn, but today it seemed beautiful. The front porch had been freshly swept, and a basket of flowers sat by the door, her father's surprise. she suspected, she ran up the steps and threw open the door. "Mama's home," she called, her voice echoing through the empty rooms. Rosa followed more slowly, supported by her father. When she stepped inside, her eyes scanned the familiar furniture, the old wooden table, the patchwork quilt on the bed, the small bookshelf filled with well-loved stories. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. Maria ran to her and hugged her tight. "Welcome home," Maria whispered. Rosa hugged her back, her eyes shining. They sat at the table that afternoon, sharing the snacks Maria had brought. Her brother chattered about how he had kept the house tidy and what new games he had invented. Maria's father poured hot tea for everyone and told jokes that made them laugh. The house was filled with the warm sound of family and the clinking of cups. After tea, Maria led her mother to the small garden out back. It was a patch of earth, with a few potted plants, her mother's lilies and marigolds. During Rosa's illness, the flowers had wilted, but her father had kept the soil soft and placed water each day. Now, the lilies stood tall, and the marigolds glowed gold in the sunlight. Maria knelt and plucked a few stray weeds, then handed her mother a small trowel. Together, they planted new seeds, a promise of growth and new beginnings, as they worked. Rosa told Maria stories of her own childhood, of how she learned to garden with her grandmother. She laughed as she remembered seeds that had sprouted into sunflowers taller than her head. Maria listened, her heart full of wonder. She felt connected not only to her mother, but to the generations before her, women who had planted seeds of love and resilience. That evening, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. Maria's father had cooked a special meal, rice with vegetables, beans, and roasted chicken. The kitchen smelled of spices and warmth. They talked and laughed, sharing memories of the clinic and dreams for the future. Maria's little brother practiced eating with a fork and dropped peas on the table, making everyone giggle. Rosa caught one pea and gently tossed it back at him, and the kitchen rang with joyous laughter. After dinner, Maria showed her mother a new drawing she had made. It was a picture of the entire journey, the dusty hospital hallways, the box of dolls, the kind faces of Dr. Patel and Nurse Elena, Mr. Reyes kneeling before the dolls, the trial rooms, and finally, their home with the garden blooming again. She had drawn herself giving her mother a hug in the center, framed by a bright sun. Rosa looked at the drawing, her eyes glistening. She studied each detail and then hugged Maria tightly. "You are my greatest gift," she said softly. Maria felt a tear slip down her cheek. She wiped it away and smiled. "No, Mama, you are mine." That night, Maria could not sleep. She lay in bed thinking of all they had endured and all they had gained. She thought of kindness, the way a little girl's gift had moved a billionaire, how doctors and nurses had poured their skill and care into her mother's healing, and how her father's unwavering hope had carried them through the darkest days. She felt grateful for every hand that had lifted them up. As she drifted off to sleep, she whispered a promise into the dark: "I will help others the way they helped us." She dreamed of a future where she grew up to be someone who could change lives, an artist who sold her drawings to bring medicine to the sick, a writer who told stories of hope, a neighbor who offered comfort to those in need. In the quiet of the night, the house seemed to breathe with peace. Outside, the garden slept under a blanket of stars, and inside, a family rested together, stronger and closer than ever before. They had faced fear and pain, but love had guided them home, and love would light their path forward, one sunrise at a time.